Good evening, everybody. My name is Adrian Asante Goodman, and I am the president of Black Advancement Incorporated, which is a nonprofit organization that seeks to combat problems within the Black community through action and dialogue. This being the dialogue portion. Hopefully, also an action portion. We'll get to that later. For tonight, we have our esteemed panel here. We have Kia Billups. We have Tiana Masakui. Qua! She told me before. Anyway, and we have Greg Goodman. That's right. That's correct. No relation. Okay. Although they are the panelists, like I said before, I'm the moderator. That does not mean that I'm the only person who gets the chance to speak or ask questions during this process. If you have any questions that come up as somebody is speaking, please feel free to interject with that, and the panelists will go into it, and everyone will. I've already given a shout out, so I'll start this off with a Front Street. The March on Washington is perhaps the pinnacle of protests. Not only did it feature some of the most important speeches and moments of the 20th century, but it also had a lasting impact on policymakers of the day, causing them to rethink their preconceived notions. Lost in the memories of most about that protest was the fear that was projected out by those very same policymakers. Fear of violence and fear of having a mass of Black people in one area. This fear, however, has subsided over the years, whether that be due to the populace going from fear to annoyance and anger, or simply that many lawmakers have, quote unquote, seen this movie before and are willing to wait it out. Despite the recent protests, with one being the biggest in American history, the needle barely moved for the disenfranchised and left the underrepresented and dark populace more disillusioned than ever of having a fair and just society. All of this leads to the question of whether protests help to contribute to the destruction of the Black community. And before I go into the first question to try to kick it off, does anyone have anything to say? Going once. Kia, you're going to start this first question. You're welcome. You did. What has been your personal experience protesting? What was the outcome? This is like, or blowback, and how did that impact you?
Oh wow, that's loaded. So my experience with protesting, I would say goes back to elementary school. Being called the N-word for the first time, being a part of Frederick County Public Schools, being elementary school. And I can remember being called the N-word and just not understanding what that meant. And it was predominantly a Caucasian school, white school. And I remember talking to my assistant principal who didn't believe me. I also got accused of choking the white boy that said it. And I was devastated. My protest was, I stopped talking. I felt like something was wrong with my voice, that I'm not being believed. Like, I just didn't understand how someone else could say something without any facts or evidence and be believed and I wasn't. And knowing the fact that I didn't do anything, and also this person called me the N-word, it was devastating. Fast forward to as an adult, I think my voice stayed very silent for years. In 2020, I sat on a couch watching the police station be burned down. I think it was in Minneapolis, at my cousin's house. And to be frank, I just remember being like, burn it down. Like, we're tired, I'm tired. And a lot of people don't want to admit that, but that's how I felt in the moment. I'm like so frustrated outside of school, being a part of society, as well as work. Like, you go through these microaggressions that are very loud to you. And so watching all that, I'm just like, burn it down. And then I remember my cousin asked me, she's like, oh, well, we got a group chat going on. People want to do something. And I'm like, well, I don't want to burn Frederick down. Like, I don't, like, the reality of home hit. Yeah. My frustration was larger than that watching it on TV. I was disconnected from that community. But once it came closer to home, she was like, well, it's very disorganized. And I have project management, strategic planning background. So I went, not as a protester. It was, I'm going to use my experience, like I'm going to use that. And so I kind of disassociated from the protesting and leveraged my experience. And it got real very quickly. People were afraid downtown businesses closed.
Boarded up.
They boarded up.
Yeah.
We had threats online. I had to meet with the police chief. A lot of people don't know the background. Like, we had literal death threats coming. They had files on people. The KKK showed up that day. I was the oldest, mid-30s, but a lot of those, the team was young. We had 6th grade, 7th grade, 10th grade, and college. So they were very young, and so I took that very serious because safety was, anytime I'm planning anything, whether it's a protest or an event, safety is of utmost for me, and that was crazy. So I really tried to protect the kids. Like, they were getting videoed at the store. I worked from home. I had my garage door up. People would randomly come in our neighborhood and stop. The police had to increase their presence in our neighborhood. I'm kind of answering both questions to give you a real perspective.
No.
The impact of it. I worked for the federal government. I was our police chief at the time, or the president is the chief. And so at the time, the administration that was in election, a lot of people assumed that this is against the administration, even though this is human rights. It was more like people come together saying, hey, Black Lives Matter, and this is why it matters. It wasn't an administration thing. But I did not mention it at my job. And my captain did. He found out through an article that I was in a part of the protest, and he congratulated me. But I worked for a very pro-Trump contractor, and I knew that that was not going to bode well. And so the blowback is there's financial impact, there's safety risk there. Like, we felt all of that. I want to say it took me every bit of 4 years to recover from it. Like, to do something like that at the magnitude in Frederick, I had people that looked like me that were upset that they weren't on the program. I have people that look like me till this day that were upset. Meeting with the team of young people, they wanted their voices heard. I think one of the oldest people we had was a family member of one of the young people, but they were in control of, like, saying who they wanted to speak and stuff. And closer to the event, I had elected officials and people of influence coming and wanting to be a part of that. And I'm from here, people that I know, people got upset. So there was a lot of blowback that people don't understand, and so I had to recover from it. Thanks to Tiana. Tiana has been a great friend since that event that has worked with me on the side. I would say one thing that I've learned is having a good support system, because raising your voice seems very courageous and bold, but making sure that you check in your mental health, emotional health, physical health. It impacted my physical health. Making sure that you keep those in the forefront, because you're no good to no one if any of those things are out of balance. And so that's what I'm saying.
Queen Latifah rules, great, so we're now. Next. Yeah. You have a question, or you got it?
Experience protesting. So if you don't know, I'm not from Frederick, and where I grew up, we fight. So no, I have not personally, physically protested anywhere, because I think that everybody has a different role in the revolution, and I probably don't need to be on the front lines all the time. And I think that it's important that people understand who they are, how they're wired, because you don't want to set the purpose of the protest back. So I really admire, it's one of the things I admire most about Kia is her composure and her ability to entertain sometimes people's foolishness in that regard. The second part of the question,
yeah, what was the outcome? Go back.
Yeah, so I would say that my protest, although I don't get in the streets, I try to encourage young people to do that. Because it's one of the easiest ways for young people to kind of disrupt the system and let their voices be heard. And I'm always encouraging them, obviously, like, you want to do this respectfully or peacefully and all those sorts of things. And then it's also helping to identify young people who may be a little more wired like myself, and you may not need to be protesting. Like, let's go work on an article and do something like that. So that's Tiana. And I appreciate seeing people who are able to do it, but I think protests are definitely a part of the strategy. They can't be the sole, what is that, piece of the strategy. It's a part. So that's what I'll say to contribute.
I like it.
Greg?
I'll keep this real short. I've never really participated in any kind of protest or anything like that, and that's mainly because I don't believe they're as effective as they used to be. There was a time back in the 60s where people would see black people in the streets getting beat with clubs and have dogs sit on them, and there was actually some empathy for it. We're in the new age now, we can see a whole black man get choked out and killed, and nobody cares, and they say it's his fault. So I'm a main proponent of boycotting and taking our talents away. If you don't want us around, we won't be around. You won't have our money, you won't have our talents. I'm waiting for the day that black people rise up and boycott the Olympics. And we'll see how great all that white power is when you're getting a bunch of 10th places. That's what I'm a fan of. I think we should,
10th place is that's kind of low. I don't know if
I know they're not getting gold.
How about John Milton being qualified?
Listen.
I'm sure they're not going to get gold. But that's what I'm a fan of. I think we should take away our money and our talents from people that don't want to be around us and don't have any empathy for our struggle.
Yeah.
So you can still protest, and I'm with you if you want to protest. I'm just telling you, I won't be there. I'll be spending my money, spending it with black businesses and black people. I will not be around you.
Well, I'll interject. I know I'm supposed to be moderator, but I did have a couple of different. Thank you. I did have a couple of different experiences with protests, but one of them, the one that stuck out to me the most, I want to say, it wasn't the second Million Man March, which was. I don't want to talk about it. We can talk about that off live because I don't want to disparage people about that. That was an interesting experience, but it was another one I believe that I was at in Washington D.C. and I'll never forget we were walking to leave the protest, and I heard a guy mad and he was cussing and he was saying all a bunch of stuff and he was like, "I'm tired of this," pretty much. He's like, "I'm sick of people protesting." And at the time, I was younger, I was like, I didn't really understand what he meant, but I think that what he was getting after is kind of what this forum is about today, which is kind of like the idea of a lot of people look at protest as the only thing that you do when it comes to resistance. And I think that he was sick of seeing people just walk around and march, because I guess let me take it back to the second Million March for just 1 second. I was walking by, I saw Erykah Badu up there, and I was like, oh, yeah, you know what I'm saying? We're about to get something good. And someone was like, sing this. Sing this. That's what they were doing, as opposed to listening to her speak. So it was kind of one of those things where it was very disheartening when you went there. And I feel like a lot of protests have become somewhat of a sideshow and a distraction from what we're supposed to be focused on. But that was just my experience with it. I digress from that.
I have one more thing. Nowadays, too, with protests, they've managed to learn how to flip the script on us, where they set it up to make us look like the violent ones when we're out there marching peacefully. And that is also something else that can be held against us during these things. I like the way that we're handling things now with this whole new Trump regime. We're not in the streets. We're minding our own business. We're taking care of black business. That is it. That's the best kind of protest to me, where we believe that we didn't create this problem. This is our problem to solve. We've done all that we can do, and I think we've taken this thing as far as we can go, as far as marching and all these other things. Now we need to let the people that cause this regime to be in charge, it's their turn to go out there and do these things. We need to let them go ahead and do what they need to do, and we should stay back, take care of ourselves, and keep moving.
Go ahead, Kevin. There's somebody in the audience who has a microphone for some reason. Go ahead.
So, and also just to take it a step further with this administration, like they are targeting the black people that are going out and getting in front and, in the lines. And when you look at the Renee Good protests and the other protests, like you see all these white people peacefully walking along, but then they're snatching up black people out of the crowds. But, I think that's there because we said we were staying home. And I feel like in general, like you said, they don't care. I literally yesterday was watching a video of a man being attacked by a dog. They pulled him out of a car. He was already subdued. 3 cops were already on him, and then they let the dog go to attack him. And then while the dog is attacking him, they're going, "Stop kicking, be still, stop resisting." But a dog is literally biting him, and people are just watching, recording with their phones. And the only thing that capitalists care about is their capital. We gotta hit them in the pockets. If people all start growing gardens, if we start working with each other, if we start pulling back and, really forming community again, that's what hurts them. They don't care about us marching in the streets. They don't care about people marching in the streets. All that does is affect traffic for a day. But nobody goes, "Oh, well, there were 100,000 people out there, so, whoa, we better listen now." They don't care.
Andy, go ahead. I saw the look in your face.
Yeah, no, I think some of the
Hold on 1 second. And I don't want to do this to you, Andy. I am sorry. There are plates here.
okay.
Go ahead.
All right, so I think some of the premises are incorrect. So and it's common and it's also understandable, where I think there's the perception that when people are protesting, that's all they're doing. And that people are tired of they're just protesting and no one cares. But that's not really considering what a protest actually is. There are different kinds of protests, right? There are statement protests where people are registering dissent, for one. So you're crafting a story. You're also inviting people into beyond the mobilization into organizing work. So you can think of the protest is carpooling. You're watching these people go by in the car, and you're like, you can't cook in there, you can't do whatever in there. It's the protest isn't the only thing. So then you want to say people don't care, but if you think about what are people actually doing with the protests? So for example, at protests, when you're making that invitation, you might bring people in who will then become part of the group that you will organize to push certain types of legislation. So for example, some of the recent protests were used to organize people to push politicians to push an anti-287G bill, right? Mm-hmm. So that is an example of protests being used effectively. So you can't actually say that protests don't work in that way, because there's a place. The thing is, it can't be the only thing. So you have the statement protests, you have mass mobilizations, you have direct actions. So there are different types of protests. They all overlap. You could have a mass mobilization that's also a statement protest, that's also a direct action, like what King was thinking with the Poor People's Campaign, mm-hmm. right? That was meant to be a direct act and didn't actually go down. You also have things like Coretta Scott King, since at least the late 40s, was participating in anti-war marches, right? She was out there before Martin. You read in King of the North, right?
Yeah.
So and at one point, in 1967, she was really happy because there was when Martin started speaking out on the Vietnam War, then she was like, okay, now we can march together, because what she had been doing is, unfortunately, black folk had been staying home, and she had been out there protesting with a bunch of white women and some white dudes until that point where there was I forget the name of the march, but there was a march she was asked to co-lead that was named after some anti-war senator. But anyway, that was the first time she was actually able to march along with black women. She complained to Martin, she was just the only black person there. So none of that's new. But anyway, that's the first thing I want to say.
Right over there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I don't think we've ever stopped protesting. I think there needs to be an understanding that it needs to evolve such as they have. Even in cases that we reminisce or discuss the civil rights movement, but it's not like we were 100% with that as well. There was also fear embedded with that as well. So that never went away. The only difference I believe now is just that whoever we protested has seen how we protested and evolved in such a way that we need to evolve. We talk about monetarily or financially, but what does that truly mean? Because we're in an age in which we see black billionaires. We see our community in which we're complacent. We have people that can commit crimes in my community, and we can also vocally speak in which we still celebrate. So where does that protest begin? Because to me, we've always protested. I don't think any of us here can recall a time in which we've never protested. It just needs to evolve in such a way that is not mimicked and used against us. I don't think that discussion is being held on the level of what we need to evaluate what exactly we're benefiting from this age. I know you said earlier that we're sitting it out. I don't think we're sitting it out. We just haven't felt a way to move the needle in a way that can push change. The changes.
When I say we're sitting it out, I mean we're not in the streets. That's what I mean by that.
But
We're not putting our bodies on the line for this group of people.
But my thing is, it's not that we were putting our bodies in the line before. The attack was to instill fear. You get me? It wasn't so much that it, no one said where I'm going to take a bullet. The bullets were shot and we were killed.
Yes.
It's not like we're not being killed now, like what you discussed with dogs. It's just in such a way that involves a fear that people don't think it's worth it because it's a sense of complacency.
You say you find it to be complacency as opposed to people like actively saying like,
No, it's not
Like, for example-
complacency, it's strategy.
like for example,
Let me break that down for you real quick. This is not strategy. If we're out in these streets, you know what the next step is, right?
yeah, but my point
But
is,
you know what the next step is, correct? Tell me
we're
what
out
the
in
next
the
step is
streets.
if we're out in the streets.
displaying our uncomfort, correct?
No. The
What's the
police
next
come, they beat people down, they say it's a big violent act, and they declare martial law.
Okay, but
That's where this is going to. That's why we're not in the streets.
okay, but you're telling me that police won't come in your house? Are you under the belief that if you're not in the streets, they won't get you? That's my question.
No,
to
I'm
you.
not saying that they won't get you. I'm saying we're not putting ourselves in harm's way for them to do this next step.
But to me, the
So it makes it way
complacency,
more difficult for them to go to that.
my opinion is the complacency is the belief of thinking that you're safe just because you're not in the streets.
Nobody said we're safe.
No, but
No,
that's
it.
my point. By believing that you're not in the streets is the complacency of thinking that you're safe.
No, it's not. Like I told you, it is a strategy.
Okay.
To not have these people take another step and to locking this whole country down and then turning this into a police state, which we're already basically living in, but it'll really officially be a police state. And then there's nothing you can do because now you're going to have a king in office because he's declared martial law, then you're going to have no voting in November and everything else. This is just a whole big scheme that they're bringing down. So without us out there, they can't, that's why it's not working. They're not doing the things that they want to do. They can't move to the next step.
They can do this without us.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They can do
do
all
that.
of everything
The
that you
belief is
described.
thinking
But
that.
I'm telling you what their plan was. They can still try to do it,
I
but it
don't
won't be
know.
on us.
I now understand where we get that train of thought. I think that is a very hyper-focused situation. I think that would require, and not that they don't hyper-focus on the black community. However, I think that I like it. Excuse me, but what I think our brother's trying to say is that they're not waiting specifically on black people to initiate some of these things that you discussed.
You don't think so?
No. They're because at the end of the day, it doesn't just break. I don't believe that this comes down to solely just race. I think that they got the smoke for anybody that
It always comes down to race.
I'm not saying that it doesn't
Literally everything.
Okay, well, it doesn't solely come down to race. I think that the financial dollar, the
Race
capital.
and finance.
Okay.
The main thing comes down to race.
Torrance, go ahead, man.
Hey, my bad, brother. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
By the way, that's a healthy discussion. This is healthy discussion.
Well, good evening, everyone. Hope you enjoy the food. So please come get the food while it's hot. So one of our issues one of our big issues is we do not have a national black agenda. We're not monolithic either, we're different. And the thing about it is when you grow up, everyone thinks that to be black, you have to be this. No, that's not the case. You can be whatever you want to be, and you're still black, because at the end of the day, you're still going to get treated by the color of your skin when you walk in spaces. So we don't have a national agenda. And we have some leaders that have come and whatever, things happen. Sometimes people believe they don't. They fall to the wayside or whatever, right? And some people attack their character and not their message, right? Sometimes the message is bigger than their character. And we, as blacks, we love to judge and point fingers, and we'll turn things down, but we'll give a pass to the other side of the token, right? And with that, they have shown us throughout history that they are just chaos and they tear things up. And we continue to forgive them and continue to try to live in their system instead of creating our own. When you go back and look at segregation and desegregation, it sounds like a good thing at first, and I think we talked about this before. And Martin realized at the last minute it was a burning house because he was like, wait, we need to keep our own, because we had our own doctors, our lawyers, our hospitals, and things that we had our schools. Once we segregated, it wasn't about giving us equal, we wanted equality. They never wanted to give us equality. They just wanted to take our infrastructure and break it down. And the last thing I would say is, if you want to change things, you have to beat them at their own game. Go back, look what the Black Panthers did in 1968 in California. They went to the Capitol with weapons, right? Because it was at the time California was a legal place to carry a weapon. What happened right after that? Ronald Reagan changed the law. Right? And I know gun violence, guns, everyone is not comfortable with guns, right? Everyone's not comfortable with guns. I am a legal collector in the state of Maryland. I'm telling you, I'm one person, but there's multiple tools to this piece of the protest, but you also got to protect yourself. So if somebody came to my house, I'm going out in the blaze of glory. So if they came to my house, you're going to read about it, because I'm going to make sure I'm protecting myself and my children. So if you can't protect yourself, you're a sheep, because the wolf is out there waiting to bite you.
So I was going to say more to the topic of having these conversations. So after the March of 2020, one thing that happened was a lot of community conversations happened, and a lot of great work came out of that. One thing that I found was we had a lot of anti-protests, and I was assaulted at the sheriff's office. What I recall from that moment, at the end of that protest, I had conversations with people that were on the anti-protest side, and we were all able to have conversations. And so the one thing that I have found is that when it's a lot of us having conversations in the Black community, sometimes we can talk at each other. We all have different lived experiences. I had to learn that to become more open-minded, because I went at it like, no, I went through this, and so it comes with frustration, anger, fear. All these things are backing what I'm saying, and sometimes I'm projecting that on another person that has a different lived experience, but the same characteristics are presented. And so I just encourage us to be able to make room for someone's experience. If we don't understand something, we may need to take a moment to ask why questions, because sometimes we could just oppose a thought without understanding really what's behind that person. And that's how we can evolve more in a conversation that's mutually understanding. I don't know your lived experience from this person's lived experience for why you came to that conclusion, but I can get a better understanding, and I don't have to live through what you went through to understand how you came to that conclusion. I find that can help us talk more together rather than just at each other, and that I find continues to divide us, because we can tend to leave and have more separate conversations about how something was divided, and that's a waste of time and effort and resources. So I would just encourage us to be a little bit more open-minded if we don't understand something, to ask why, maybe before presenting our argument, because that person has a lived experience that's backing that thought or that perception or that judgment that happened.
Chad, you have the microphone.
Q.
It's flick it up. Should be good. Is that already? Oh, somebody, go ahead, man. You
Talk.
Yeah, you got it.
Oh, it is. You always ask questions. Like, I want to sit here and listen, and you always put a question out there that makes me want to say something. So,
That's the point.
So I'll say a couple things. One, I have a extensive background of protesting, marching. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and so we had, I can't remember, it was the G7 summit there when I was in college. We marched on that. Johnny Gamage was killed in Pittsburgh. We had a march on that. Freddie Gray, when I was down here teaching in Montgomery County, I did in Baltimore for that. The women's march, I went to that. I went to Florida, march against the Proud Boys. Everybody sees the march, but you don't see the organizing for power that's behind the march. There's a lot of organizing for power. And I also think sometimes, you know, we as African Americans, as black people, we always try to stay insular. And no protest in American history that has been successful has worked without intersectionality. Like, the fact is that, yes, I agree with you, a lot of things in America, the whole Constitution is based on race, or the exclusion of people. But you can't break it just with you. You have to break it with intersectionality and organizing for power across multiple regions, multiple races, multiple cultures, multiple religions. So someone brought up Martin Luther King. In that time when they were protesting, everybody thought of him as a figure until you went to Harlem, New York, and realized that Malcolm X was a figure. Until you went to somewhere else and you realized that Diane Nash was a figure, and SNCC was a leader over here, and FCLC was in the South. The fact is, you know, anytime we think about protesting against whatever it is, it's not one group and one person. Now, I will say there's different type of protests, because there's an economic protest, which is boycotting.
Yep.
But that doesn't go far enough, because most people care about whatever you are protesting when they see someone, unfortunately, get injured in some way. We saw that with ICE. Even though there was a lot of African Americans out there marching in ICE, there were a lot of people throughout the cities that are out there protesting. There's a reason why he hasn't gone to Philadelphia, and there's a reason why he hasn't gone to New York, and the reason why I just came from Chicago this weekend, that they are back, they are fighting against it. It's just not televised. I will say also, we as adults in here, we have all the ideas that we want. The second thing that is true about every protest in the United States is young people have been the tipping point. If you think of Birmingham, Alabama, the March in Selma, if you think about Voting Rights Act, if you think about Black Lives Matter, it wasn't the adults that did it. It was freeing the kids and giving them the ability to be able to march, to teach them the tactics, and having the administrative support behind them. So if you want to truly change, you know, a system, you can't change it from, and say this, 25-year-olds and up. You got to change it from the 12 to 18-year-olds. Those are the people that are going to change, because they're not going to just change for a year. They're going to change for the rest of their lives. It's going to be a 60-year change, and that's why how America can change. You know, it starts with one person here saying something, but it ends up with children leading and pushing it forward and making sure that every other group that's around you in your neighborhood is behind your system as well. And that's the organization for power that sometimes we miss.
I don't want to, Jared, I know you're next, man. But I was just wondering, he brought up something that was interesting with the intersectionality part, and it brings about the idea of people co-opting protests and co-opting movements. And I don't want to throw that grenade out here right this second. I want Jared to go first. But yeah, Jared, I just wanted people to think about that and ruminate on that and then get back to it.
Gerard.
Gerard, I'm sorry, hey man, you could have corrected me before, brother. That's on you.
No, I'll try to be brief, but there's been a lot said that I want to kind of go back through. One, just kind of talking about some of the protests specifically following George Floyd. If you drill down, those protests were extremely effective, right? When you drill down and look at the specific legislative and policy changes that happened, especially within the Minneapolis Police Department, right? Following that protest, you know, chokeholds, you know, banned in the police department, right? Body cams, you know, mandated after that weren't mandated there before. Broad sweeping changes to their training and community policing regimens, right, within that specific police department. So highly effective when you drill down on what they were actually looking to accomplish, right? And so also that sustained movement after his murder sparked a nationwide you know, wave of protests that were highly effective across the nation, right? You know, institution of you know, corporate DEI policies all over, most of which have now been eroded, obviously, but right. But at the time, right, pretty effective for accomplishing at least bringing people back into that conversation. So that's kind of point one, is just that when you drill down on some of those protests being very effective at the time. Breonna's Law came about, after she was killed in, what was that, Louisville?
Yes.
Right, and so now no-knock warrants, right, ban on those, right? So when you drill down on some of those specific instances, very effective, but the difference is some of those protests were very specific, very targeted. They targeted specific lawmakers and legislators. They were sustained protests. They were very focused. They had very clear agenda and very clear demands, right? I think that's what really made them stand out. So the other point real quick is just kind of not to get back into the back and forth that was there a minute ago, but just in terms of what's happening now, the anti-Trump, the anti-ICE, the No Kings protests, I agree that we are, as a people, purposefully sitting out. That is a strategy. There are a lot of us that go out into the street, but I think a lot of black organizations are purposefully sitting this one out. I don't know that I agree with that strategy because, to Tiana's point, I don't know that race is the tipping point of what they're looking for, right? I think violence is what they're looking for, as the spark that they're going to use to institute that martial law. I don't know that it has, and I'm not completely disagreeing with you. I'm saying I don't necessarily know that if we were to inject ourselves as a culture and as a people into these current protests, that would be the automatic deciding factor for martial law. I also think that on some level, these current protests are a continuation of the civil rights struggles, and the fact that they've now been adopted by white society, by other cultures. It may be a F around and find out, and you may be late to the party, and we've been telling you for 100 years that this has been coming, but just because now they have picked up that sword doesn't mean necessarily that maybe we should put it down. Just my thoughts.
Go ahead, Greg, and then we'll go to the second question.
See, the thing that you had brought up about the violence part, that's why it's important for us not to be out there. Because that's where the violence is sparked. That's where they want the violence with us. And that's why it's not happening that way.
To me, I guess that assumes that the minute that we get involved, it's going to turn violent.
I can guarantee you it will.
I promise. That's who they aim for.
Go ahead, sir.
I just feel like, if I can relate it to anything, I hope no one gets offended by this, but I feel like it's a 1,000-pound problem, and us as a black community are always looking for Ozempic. We're always trying to find the quickest way to make things go away. But this is a problem that's going to take time, and this is the other part. It's a moving target that we're chasing. So we really don't. We think we know, right? We think we know what the mainstay is for the reason that we're being treated the way we treated. We at the minimum we hope that it's skin, right? That it's just a black against every other culture type of thing. But I don't even think it's that. I think that there's something inherently evil about what's going on, and I don't think we're going to get all the information to even solve it. And I think that's why the target is always moving. I think that we're going to have to diversify. I think we're going to have many different angles. Some people are going to have to sit at home and not spend their money. Some people are going to have to go on the streets and knuckle up. Some people are going to have to sit amongst advisors. You know what I'm saying? I just think that we're not going to have a one-shot kill for this issue. And I think the more that we sit around and argue about what's the one-shot kill, the people who could be doing the work in any category that we need the work done in, they're not going to do it, or we're going to talk them out of it. For the people who want to protest, let them go to the streets and protest. That, like you said, that is effective in some nature to some things. And for the people who need to sit in the boardrooms and the community forums and all those type of things, let them do it. I say we need a multiverse of a situation. Right. We can't just keep looking for the one-shot kill. Like,
I don't think anybody here is advocating for a one-shot kill.
Well, I know. I'm saying I think that we get into like protests. The word in itself looks like one thing, so we think it's people just hitting the street, and it's really a bunch of things. It's, hey, you know how I protest? I take care of my family. I try to be a good father and a good husband. That's one way I try, right? I might not. I've been in the streets. I've sat in rooms. I've sat with collectives. I sit with organizations. But I think that we're going to have to understand that we're facing a moving target, and it's going to take a bunch of different angles to actually catch it.
Yeah. One more. Since you want to tag on at the end. Go ahead.
I think probably it's a great protest.
Hi everyone, I'm Shanika, and I've been teaching for over 20 years now. And speaking of diversifying, I don't go out in the street. I have bad knees.
That's real.
I don't want to hold anybody back. But I have always used my pedagogy and my resistance. I'm that person that, oh, you're going to ban 1619? Oh, I'm putting it in my curriculum. Like, I find ways to have these conversations, and you'd be really surprised that the people that you don't think get it, they get it. And they're having the conversations, and it allows me to have a broader audience and to have the conversations that we need to have. So we're starting with the youth. I teach, I've taught K through 12, I taught in a prison, and I'm now teaching college. And we're having those deep conversations. I'm teaching African American literature right now. And I teach 1619 right along with it, because you can't understand the literature if you don't understand the context and where it came from. I also ride around in my mobile bookstore with All Big Books, all Black authors. And you talk about supporting Black businesses. One book won't kill you for that. But honestly, and my biggest customers, believe it or not, don't look like us, because they want to teach their children the history. So I get a lot of customers that don't look like me, that I'm having really candid conversations with while they're buying my books about Black culture and understanding the history. So there are other ways to protest, and I just choose to use pedagogy as well.
I'm going to go on to question number 2 now. That was the first Hey, and for y'all who are new here, this is how it's supposed to go, okay? This is how you get to solutions, or at least an idea of what you should be doing next, is by having these discussions, hammering through things, finding out where the populace stands, and then moving forward from there. So, I digress. What issues should Black people be protesting right now, and why? And I will go with, go ahead.
I mean, there's so many to choose from. I don't even know. I'm a focus on youth development and education, because that's the only thing I try to deal with. Adult problems are just too much for me. I think that in the world of education, I have chosen to protest by withdrawing my children from public schools. One has chosen to go back, and not in Frederick County. She wanted to go to school in Baltimore City so she could have a distinctly Black experience. And over the last couple of years homeschooling, I focused a lot on teaching my children how to advocate for themselves, how to speak up, not being afraid of what other people think of you, and doing what you know is right based on your moral compass, because that is what I think it takes to change a society. I've also focused on teaching them how to build authentic relationships, because I think if more adults could build authentic relationships, we'd have more change, but too often our egos get in the way. So that's something I intentionally work on for myself, is how can I focus on removing me from the equation and centering other people. I'm married to an African man, right? We've got Haitian people in this community who have been assaulted, and so I'm going to drag it back to the previous question, just because I am just slightly, because, and then bring it back to this.
No, it's fine. You do what you.
There has to be, until we all recognize that, like, your struggle is my struggle, and that all of our struggles are connected. One group of people oppressed is all group of people oppressed. We're not going to get anywhere, especially because we are still like a minority in this community, in this country. So, but I think that by focusing on providing young people with mentoring, support, just being a listening ear, that's how I'm choosing to focus. That's the protest I'm focused on, like making sure that they have the support they need. Right now, young people are incredible. They're not confused. They're incredibly disappointed. and they're incredibly angry. If you're a parent and you haven't, if you haven't talked to your children about it, I mean, my children say all sorts of stuff. A couple of weeks ago, our oldest girl got to participate in her school did a protest. And she was like, yeah, Mommy, I see why you're about this life now. I'm like, I know, don't it feel good? Just because there is no reason why young people should not be able to express themselves. But the challenging part is young people in this community did the same thing, and there are young people that received detention. There were negative impacts of them choosing to protest. Now, it is 2026. If we have not pushed for changes in policy so that young people aren't like demonized or like, reprimanded for speaking up and sharing their thoughts, we have to work on that. I know Chad's gonna help me. So I would say that's the space in which I try to focus on it. And if we can, everyone take time to encourage a young person today, because that's something that everyone can do. I think we'll get closer to seeing young people who are more prepared to engage with system structures and pushback in a healthy way. I hope that answers the question.
Greg. You did fantastic.
Can I say something really quickly? I say let them get detention, right?
Yeah.
Because one of the greatest pieces of literature that ever graced our presence was Letter from Birmingham Jail, right? After a protest. So let them write a letter from the detention of whatever school, right?
Sincerely,
I agree with that. I think that they should be able to learn from that. But then on the other side, like, we will always want to hope that we're changing laws and policies and procedures that like make it harder for them to do that. So I think there is benefit, obviously, to that. But like scratch the policies where like kids are just getting blanket detention. If they didn't damage anything or anything like that, then like what are we really talking about? But I use the opportunity to learn from it.
I just want to say, it's not an opinion that a lot of people like, but on the flip side of that, right, I agree with let them get detention. Because one thing that came out of my experience in protesting was being educated and informed about what backs the outrage. I had a lot of conversations where people were upset at police brutality and not understanding that the law enforcement Bill of Rights protects them and how they protect them. So I got informed about that. I got educated about that. I sat on a committee that went to advocate against some of those rights that law enforcement officers have. So we have to, it is in my opinion that we have to be careful with being upset at the consequences that they get, because I also look at that other side. If someone was protesting in support of ICE, they have that right as well. And for us to say, oh, don't get detention, I feel like we will still have outrage against someone else's protest if we don't agree. And that's not the only perspective, but that can be another perspective. Are we going to make that even? To say if you're protesting anything. So there's policies that exist within school. We have Board of Education. You're like, get informed about that and then organize, strategize to make change. But like you're saying, encourage young people that positive can come out of those consequences. People got arrested because they broke the law at the time. Laws changed. Like sitting at a cafe to order a drink, outrage, right? But they got arrested. And things changed after that because at the time it was against the law for them to do that. So I think it should advocate for other actions to happen so that those things can be a rite of passage without consequences if we're looking at those consequences.
Well, then what's the point of protesting? We'll not go. What is the so if you want young people to speak up and express express how they feel, why yes, if they have any sort of pushback, for or against whatever the issue is, of course they should be able to do that. I'm not saying it's just if you're against the current regime or not. I think I'm confused as to then why would we not want to change something that's making that could be seen as a barrier? But that's not. I don't think
No, I'm saying change it.
You're saying,
but don't there were people in the community that were outraged. Like I was participating in conversations where people are like, they shouldn't get detention, they shouldn't do this, they shouldn't do that. Well, what is Frederick County Public Schools policy is what I would say. What is the policy? If you
Your
walk out of
policy
class,
needs to change.
if you walk out of class, then this is the consequence. And people that I was having conversations with was arguing against them because they believed in what they were protesting.
Okay.
And that can be very dangerous, especially within a school system. So if they are getting consequences, I love the idea that you said. It could be an opportunity to help empower them in the consequences, flip it from a negative, because they may not understand, I'm protesting something right. I stand for this. And now it could come on top of them to make them feel more disenfranchised if they don't understand how to be empowered with the consequence. So I'm all for it. I'm just saying that those conversations got very heated after protests in the community. And my thing is, it's in Frederick County Public Schools. Do we understand what drives the consequences of what we should do? Because consequences are going to exist, whether it's Frederick County Public Schools or we shut down 70, we still have consequences to a protest. That's all I meant. Not do it, not support them, but just making sure we're having a big picture conversation about it and not just advocating for something that we support and saying don't give them consequences because of where I personally stand and what they're doing. Does that make sense?
Let me let Greg answer the question, and then she can go first. Oh, she can go first? Go ahead, Shanice.
Okay, so what does Senator John Lewis said? Sometimes you have to get into good trouble.
Yeah.
I was just reading that story to my kindergartners the other day. Because sometimes you may do standing up for what you believe that gets you into trouble. But you don't encourage people not to stand up because they're the fear of getting into trouble. And like John Lewis said, you know, when I grow up, I want to get into trouble. But that trouble is, your mom said, if you do this, you're going to get into trouble. He said, but I'm going to get into good trouble. So sometimes having that consequence is a part of the struggle. Policy change is great, but understanding that if you're standing up for something you believe in and you really believe it, do it. No matter the consequence, because you're making change. And out of this change could be a policy change because people got in trouble, but they had to do it first. So I would say, I would encourage kids to get into good trouble for the sake of what they believe, because I don't think you should back down from things that are important to you.
All right, Greg, I'm going to repeat the question. What issues should Black people be protesting right now, and why?
That's hard to say because not everyone has the same issues within the Black community. I think our main protests should be things like this: organizing and focusing, because we all have the same goal. We all have different ways to get there. Some of my ideas may be off kilter. Some of those ideas may be better than mine, or vice versa. But that's where our protest needs to stand in the organization. Like you were saying with the protest, it's more to it than just in the streets. It's the stuff behind the scenes. I'm more focused on the stuff behind the scenes than not being in the streets. That's where we need to be organized at. From there, we go to local governments and everything. That's where we make our noise at. In voting booths and pressuring our politicians to work for us. Walking in the streets, I think those days are over because those are just a whole lot of extra brutality and stuff that could be seen, and things that are going to be made to look like we're out here being portrayed as animals because someone did something that they deem as violence. Behind the scenes is where we need to be more so often, and we need to be more focused on our struggle. We are too inclusive at this point. We just saw an election where every other demographic voted against our interests. So obviously they don't care like we thought they cared. Because we've had everyone's back, for the most part, in this country. All the Latinos and everybody else, we've stood by with everyone and tried to bring up the whole rainbow correlation, or coalition, whatever.
The coalition?
Yeah, whatever. I got a lot of detention. But we need
that was not good trouble.
Yeah, the worst kind of trouble. Lucky I graduated. But point being is, we need to organize amongst ourselves, and then we can all find a focal point which will work best for everyone within the diaspora and move on from there. So things like this, these kind of communications is where the process should be held. From here, then putting pressure on our local politicians to push these things forward. I think that's what we need to do.
Kid, I'm gonna repeat the question for you. Oh,
No, sorry.
I'm sorry, I was,
No, go ahead. Let's just speak, please.
you wanna go right after?
Well, I was just going to respond
No, you
to
go ahead.
some of what he was
Go
saying, but
ahead.
unless you want to go, you.
No, you gotta go.
Get it while it's fresh. Go ahead.
So, the thing that you were saying that you prefer to be more behind the scenes, that's cool. But the thing is, behind the scenes does not mean, and the value of behind the scenes, which is, I think, more, does not mean that there's no place for being in the streets, for no place for even being on the sidewalks, for protest, for like overt protest. Because again, different kinds. You have the statement kind, direct action kind. It might be smaller, it might be mass mobilization, and those protests can enable some of the behind the scenes stuff. Like I just gave the example earlier, where you are you're at a demonstration, you have tables set up, and people are signing up. They're giving donations that you're using for supporting immigrants affected by ICE. You are capturing people's information who are going to participate in pressuring the politicians, like you were just saying. Like, we've actually seen that happen. That actually, it's not even something, we could be doing. It's something that actually exists right now, facilitated by the protests. So
I agree with you. 100%.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, we shouldn't be the ones out there in those streets protesting.
Well,
That's all I'm saying.
okay.
Everyone else can do what they do.
I don't know that the white folk by themselves will get this right. That's actually why I am.
White folks know how to protest. You know how I know?
How?
Because I've seen them all spitting and throwing rocks at a little girl trying to go to school for the first time. They know how to get out in the streets.
No, that's not the kind of we're not talking about. We're not talking about going. That's not what we're talking. That's not, but not in a useful way. There's a very big difference between spitting at a child and throwing rocks and then having a protest to mobilize people so that you can funnel them to organization.
Like I said, I understand what you're saying. What I'm saying is they know how to do this too. I've seen them go out there and protest before.
In this country, yeah. Look, I know. Look, like I gave the example earlier of Coretta Scott King from in the late 40s on protesting mainly with white folk, right? Until 67. So it can be done, but I think I'm not necessarily asking for the majority of black folk to be involved, but there are going to be some of us who will be doing that.
That's fine.
Chad, I saw you out there.
Yeah, that's fine.
So,
go out there in those streets if you want to.
and also, but not.
We should be behind the scenes on this.
We might be behind the scenes and in the streets as well.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, behind the scenes does not preclude being in the street.
But you understand why?
I understand. I feel you. You know, I'm actually.
Like, especially right now.
Yeah, right
where
now.
we are targets right now.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's never worked.
We still got to get from point A to point B, y'all. Like, they literally have never needed us in mass in the streets to target us, ever. That is like literally American history. But I get what you're saying. It may seem like we're an open target.
Why make it easy for them to get us?
Is it really that much easier? I don't know.
Well, yeah, and then on top of that, they need the spectacle. They need the spectacle of somebody being hit with the hose or bitten by the dog or whatever to get the rage to get everybody out so they can enact the martial law that they are trying to bring forth right now.
I say, y'all have read a little bit of Project 2025, right? That whole thing?
Have y'all read Project Esther following 2025? Because that's way more like
that they're trying to implement.
I know what they're trying to implement, but I also.
Go ahead, man.
I just want to add this. I understand how you feel, but remind everybody we're not a monolith.
That's what I said to
The only reason why I say that is because, and I apologize for the reference, but everyone's heard of Star Wars, of course. One particular show. Again, I apologize. I apologize. I apologize for the reference, but one show after I stopped watching it called Andor.
You don't gotta qualify.
But how it standing out was they showed how the rebellion came across. And it wasn't any Jedi's or any space wizards. It was a group of angry people in different pockets who wanted to do something. Some were more violent, some were more secretive, some were more overt, some were more covert. But it didn't really get rolling. So they brought them together despite their differences. But each one added an element to the overall struggle that made them change the needle. One were terribly violent to the point that they were blowing stuff up. They had their say. There was another group that was secretly supplying people with weapons. They had their say. But overall, no one was wrong in their decision-making process. They just added more to the pot in ways that they felt that it could happen. If you felt you need to be out in the streets and you could effectively cause attention to yourself, do it. If you feel that by educating people on what the past provides to people who are confused, do it. As long as it pushes the needle to bring more attention to change. I'm not going to sit here and say I protest, because I don't. I'm fearful. I don't want no club on me. I don't want no dog on my leg. But at the same token, I will rah-rah you to a point if you think you can do it. And I will hand you that, whatever you need in order to get it done, and have people bail you out when you get out. But again, it's your passion and how you want to display it.
We're kind of on the same page.
You get me? Yeah, but again, that's what made. But I can't sit here and say don't protest. I can't sit here and say don't teach your kids. You get me?
Never say that.
Yeah, but some people, well, okay, interesting that you should say that. I grew up in an African household. So when I wanted to make change, my parents was like, no, we don't want you in jail, go sit down. Leave those people alone. That act of fear of seeing your loved ones get hurt is a visual thing that people are afraid of. So when I say that, it doesn't come with the understanding that they don't want change. It's that they don't think your loved one's sacrifice is worth it. You get me? So when I say that in that regard, it's not like people don't want change. It's what kind of sacrifice do those people mean to give.
Yeah, that's what I said at the beginning. We all have a different perspective, but we all have the same goal. That's why things like this are important.
Yes.
This is the kind of protest that we should need. This is what we need to do.
Just
Discuss, figure out, and find the best way for everybody to live.
I'm gonna ask you the question again.
Yes.
Okay. What issue should Black people be protesting right now,
Oh, wow.
and why?
So I'm going to piggyback off of the conversation that's been happening, and from my own experience go, it's whatever impacts you. Because we're not a monolith, because we don't all have the same experiences that drive our passion, our purpose, our mission. We all have different purposes here on earth. Like figuring those things out can really drive you. One question that came out of being known for the protest, like I was an educated protester that could say this is why, one thing that I would tell people was, like, find your passion, find your tribe. Because I can't tell you to join something and that the puzzle piece don't fit. And now you're sitting involved in something that maybe had a lot of people or things like that, but the purpose that you are here for isn't directly connected. So for me, coming out of the demonstration, I was a part of co-founding a nonprofit organization that helped me because it met a lot of what impacts Black people. So Black Equity Health Coalition focuses on physical health, spiritual health, mental health, maternal health, which I serve as the Black Maternal Health Spoke for, youth and family development, which is Tiana, social health, economic health, social justice, and residential health. Because it hit all those things, I was like, I can't hit all those things. People were asking me to come to do things left and right. Again, burnt out, physically drained, mentally, emotionally. I had to really center myself to go, this is a big ocean. That march in 2020, although people like, Tiana tends to give like, no, give your prop. Like a lot of people came to that. But that was a drop in the bucket. That was a ripple effect that enacted change. But the numbers really didn't drive me. I really had to figure out, okay, from that, where do you fit in? What are the things closest to you? And Black maternal health is. I had my own near-death experience as a Black woman. I had a cousin that passed away after childbirth. And so I had to start connecting with the things that I'm passionate about, that align with my purpose. And I found that I didn't get burnt out so easy. I wasn't as drained. I had to start saying no to something. People don't like no. I had to learn to say no. Growing up in fear and things like that, my lived experience, I didn't necessarily know how to say no. That thing of people pleasing and just saying yes. My husband's shaking his head. I would say yes to everybody. And then I'm coming home and he's like, you have nothing left for your family. And so I encourage people to get in touch with themselves. And I said this, right?
Trigger, man. Maybe we should move on.
But that's important because you have people that you go out and you give and then you have nothing for your family. And then, like we talk about generational and trauma and generational curses, which I call patterns. How do those things get passed down? You talked about fear. I was raised with that fear. You go to work and you don't ruffle no feathers. You go to work, you put your head down. And for years, I was like, but they is doing some crazy stuff up in here. And I'm the type, like, I had to learn. But it was driven by fear, by being raised by, my dad is from Frederick, and he had his own negative experiences that he didn't share those until I did a demonstration. And now we're having conversations about how he couldn't walk through Baker Park. He couldn't go to Baker Park Pool. But what he did was, he passed it down through what he did say to me. I was raised, everything was the white man. Like, so as an older Black man, it's like, he come home, he talking about work, it's the white man, it's the white man. So I'm looking at these white men like, y'all are dangerous to me. Because I heard that in my household. And I had to get a better understanding of that so that I could do away with the fear that it taught me, get better informed so that I could have a strategy to navigate that corporate world because that fear was impacting me. So long story short, get in touch with yourself. Connect with other people to have those conversations to figure it out if you don't know where to fit in. I'm telling you, if you start with the things that come natural to you, it makes the work so much easier. And it could be marching in the street. It could be not going to Target. It could be all those things. Because again, if we look at it as an ocean analogy, the ripples, and that's the thing, we have more people sitting doing nothing and talking about what people are doing than actually figuring, like, going back to self. We're externalizing it, like, well, they doing this, and I'm gonna sit this one out, and well, what are you doing? Like, I tend to go to that question when people start going into it. What are you doing? And tell me how you fit into this, because I want to hear your experience, because I don't want to do that, but now I know what you do. We have a lot of people in here that represent a lot of different organizations, businesses, government, Frederick County Board, HRC, all those things. Like, I'm able to do a lot of good work through a lot of the connections. If I have an issue, I've reached out to a married lady who has educated me, like on a Saturday morning for hours after demonstrating and getting informed. Like, I've talked to people with the Board of Education. So now that's how we connect. I'm not going, well, what they doing over there? No, I know somebody that, oh, you talking about that? I have more conversations like that and like entertaining those than having conversations about, well, protesting this or I'm not doing that. We're never going to make impact is another thing. We ain't never going to solve this problem in some of the conversations from couch livers. So I think we need to get connected with our purpose and start having more collective conversations and be open to people sharing where they fit in.
Please.
Because I know some of us in here are really our family people. I don't think, I hate when I see Black folks discount the power of a functional family. Because of what our communities have been stereotyped as, the attacks that we've had, look at the violence that was committed against our communities simply when the Black man stepped out the door, right? And how, no disrespect to anybody who's ever used government systems, but like welfare was a great strategy, right, in tearing our communities apart, because now you have black men, black women, not intentionally, like, we can't work together, we can't partner, because that means that there's a resource that we need, we won't get. So I think when we talk about like how we get started in this, if you literally just start in your own home, the impact that can have, husbands and wives on the same page, working towards a common purpose, not working against each other's efforts, having healthy relationships with your children so that you're not spending most of your money on legal fees, but like educational opportunity. And hey, like I got a brother that's locked up, so I'm not playing with nobody. But using your opportunity, using your finances to benefit your children's long-term like educational goals, not just like what they want. No disrespect to Roblox or anything else, right? But like we have to think a little more intentionally about what we're doing within our homes on a day-to-day basis and how that could be a launching point for that.
Try.
Thank you. And, I don't know that this is working, but we have to break out the MC voice. I wholeheartedly agree with what you said, Akila, in that finding your own passion, the things that you are passionate about. Kia. Apologies.
I'm also
Thank
in
you.
the phase to correct
No,
them every time.
that's what I'm saying.
It's my fault. I started the whole thing.
We're good. But I think that's absolutely right. But if the question is, what should we, as a larger people, be protesting right now? I think, the SAVE Act, for one, right? I think if you read that legislation, that is probably the single most blatant piece of voter suppression legislation to ever surface. Some of the tenets of that bill would undo massive portions of the Voting Rights Act instantly. I think some of the things that are happening underneath the radar with, midterm gerrymandering and some of the redistricting that's happening, that rewinds the clock all the way back to some of the initial strategies to steal, our power at the ballot box. So I think that's probably one of the most important things we can be paying attention to, is preserving our right to show up and cast our vote. And also, while not very sexy or engaging, is a lot of the efforts to erode the DEI policies, the economic opportunities that we fought so hard for, right? I mean, you look at the federal DBE program, right? The restrictions on federal government contracting, the programs that we fought so hard to put in place. This is kind of the area that I live in, so I'm paying attention to it. But when you really look at what's happening across the board to erode and take away some of the economic advancement that has been fought so hard for and won, if we're not paying attention to it, that can be catastrophic. So I think that's something we should pay attention to, and really, if we are fighting for something or protesting about something, it would be, something like that. But it's kind of hard, against, federal contracting dollars and set aside programs are not necessarily sexy or,
Sexy. So I don't mean to cut in. I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut in, but we're running low on time, and panelists haven't eaten yet. I'm talking to myself. But with that being said, what's being handed out to everybody is we are a solutions-based organization. So we don't just come up here just to get people riled up.
See, y'all making fun of me because I ain't bring my cheaters. And I can't read the
Some people do not have their readers on. Be careful with these documents. But these companies that you see are some of the companies that heavily supported basically getting rid of DEI in one way or another. Now, I don't expect everybody to go out here and take all 119 companies and be like, I'm not doing any of this, right? None of these things, because that's just not logical for people's lives. However, if you are thinking about boycotting some of them or getting other people to help you protest against some of them, this is probably a good place to start. So as an organization that is solutions-based, we said, hey, maybe we can give people a baseline to start. Target's already well known.
Everybody already knows that.
Yeah. But also, this is the list of people who donated very heavily. Go ahead. Actually, I'm sorry. Before you do, I'm gonna try to wrap it, and then I'm gonna let you go right after that. Okay? Just give me 1 second. I promise. So what I'm gonna do is I am going to wrap this up. First of all, I'll give a hand for the panelists that we had today. No, that's why. No, but that's actually. So for everybody over here, Please give a shout out to R&B Books as well. Relax. We have other things in the back. You'll see if you while we do the snack and chat, there's a QR code back there for both of the some of the solutions that we have as an organization. You can look back there. If you look back there right now, you'll see one of the booklets that we have. All these are going to be updated as well, but they give you kind of a snapshot of some of the stuff that we have going on. As we like to do, we like to give the floor, open the floor to other people who have other things going on in the community, maybe something that they're about, so that way we can have other people be involved in stuff that you do. But before we get into that, Ms. Chubb, you had your hand raised. Go on.
I just wanted to know the source. There's not a source.
There is a source right there. It says "Good Unite Us" and Open Secrets. Open Secrets is the source.
It's right here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And thank you for clarifying that as well by saying like, hey, who's this coming from? And I was gonna be like, it's coming from the little man. Is what I was gonna say.
Thank you.
Yeah. But I mean, like I said, you don't have to trust us. You can look at it and be like, I wonder if that's the case. Because when I saw Stone Cold Jr. on there, I was like, yo, I don't think he's gonna do this.
Walmart's not on here.
It is on there. It's in alphabetical order as well. I think it's on there.
Walmart's not on here.
Is
I'm
Walmart
gonna Walmart
115?
You know,
115 is missing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, is 115 missing?
I think
That might
Walmart.
probably Walmart. It's a conspiracy. Go ahead.
You know what? Out of this list, what I think is funny is like you got Meow Mix on here. It's like, man, we are up against some racist cats. We got.
First of all, yes. You know what I'm saying? That's the first thing, brother. Mario was out here taking our stuff. But go ahead.
Very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And we are live. And
Right?
I do
That's
work
I
for
saw
some people,
that.
so I'm not advocating for anything specific. However, I will say the Montgomery bus boycott was very, very successful because it was local. It was extremely targeted, right? So while these are large national corporations, right, the Montgomery bus boycott, extremely effective because it was local, it was targeted, and it hurt that specific entity, local level. It was very effective.
No, I understand what you're saying. So that's
Sustained for them. That's how they got there.
So do with that information,
These are national businesses.
Of
You know what I'm
course,
saying?
nothing wrong with this.
Yeah, and like I said, just someone here that I'm not gonna give up, brother. I'm just
Listen, I know, someone here, I gotta.
Information to make an informed decision.
Correct. Yeah. Like if you
My
probably-
husband may like cinnamon and still won't go.
Sometimes I understand those racist statements online, just in case they happen to own a business in Frederick, and I will not, you're not getting it out from me. So if there are those people, if you know of somebody who, they play games and all that other stuff, I would love for us to be sharing that.
Yeah. Also, shout out to Out 40 for doing a live stream, man. She always helps me out. Appreciate that. Big time, big time. Is there anybody else who is doing anything in the community that they'd like other people to know about?